You know what I think we miss a lot in children when we talk about kids and ADHD? We always talk about attention and focus, hyperactivity, impulsivity, but what we don't talk about enough is anger, irritation, frustration, aggression. These kids might be aggressive toward their siblings or their family members or their classmates or their teachers. Because for a lot of kids, that's how ADHD really looks. It's not just spacing out in class, but snapping out when something feels too hard. It's not just being hyper, but being overwhelmed by everything happening in their body and brain all at once. ADHD isn't just about not paying attention, it's about trouble regulating attention, emotion, energy, and impulse. These are kids who get frustrated easily, cry over seemingly small or irrelevant things, and who yell when they feel misunderstood. They might throw something or slam a door, and then they might feel genuinely bad 5 minutes later. They're not trying to be difficult. It's just that their brain is reacting before it can reflect. Here's what it might look like day to day. They might start homework, but don't finish it. They lose their backpack, their jacket, and their patience all before noon. They talk too much, interrupt others, blurt out answers before other people are done talking, or maybe say something impulsive and then instantly regret it. They can't stand waiting their turn or being told no. And when they're frustrated, it can look like defiance, but it's really dysregulation. Teachers might say, they're so smart, but they don't try, they don't apply themselves, or they have such a short temper. But what's really happening is that their frontal lobe can't slow their amygdala down fast enough in situations that are overwhelming. Let's talk about brain science for a second. ADHD affects the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that helps us plan, focus, and hit pause before we react. It also affects the amygdala, which fires our emotional alarms. And it affects the anterior cingulate cortex, which is what helps us switch tasks and regulate emotion. And that can also play a part in autism spectrum disorders with switching tasks and regulating emotion. In ADHD, those systems don't sync perfectly, right? So when something feels overwhelming, that emotional alarm starts to go off. But the pause button hasn't loaded yet. It's not fully developed because the frontal lobe isn't fully developed yet. That's why they'll yell before they think, cry before they can explain, or get irritated over something that seems small or irrelevant. This isn't poor parenting or just bad behavior. It's a neurodevelopmental delay in self-regulation. A lot of neurodivergent children live in a constant state of emotional overload. They feel things so deeply. They're sensitive to tone, to rejection, to boredom, to failure. If they feel like someone's disappointed in them, they can go from calm to crushed instantly. That's what we sometimes call rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is that fast, deep pain when they think someone's mad at them. These kids are not manipulative. They're not just overreacting. They just don't have enough regulation bandwidth yet. When kids are little, it might look like tantrums and endless energy. In elementary school, it might look like blurting out answers in class, or fighting with classmates and teachers, or forgetting their homework. In middle school, it becomes more frustration, sarcasm, rebellion, and emotional shutdown. And by high school, sometimes it starts to look like anger, defiance, or even social withdrawal, when in reality, they've internalized years of feeling too much. When you recognize that those outbursts aren't badness, they're overload, everything starts to change. The perception, these kids don't need harsher consequences. They need co-regulation. They need adults who say, you're not in trouble for having big feelings. Let's figure out what your brain needs right now. They need breaks implemented and structure and support and, yes, sometimes medication to help the brain keep pace with the demands of the world. Because when a kid's nervous system finally has enough support, that anger that they're experiencing starts to quiet down, and that aggression starts to dissolve. You start to see curiosity, humor, creativity, and compassion underneath. And that's when they finally start to believe, I'm not a bad kid. I just needed someone to understand how my brain works. So when you see a child who's angry, defiant, or explosive, don't assume they're oppositional. Ask yourself if they might be overstimulated, undersupported, or misunderstood. Because so often, anger is the language of a brain that's trying its best and just doesn't have the words yet. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.